Every year, millions of Americans begin a climb towards financial independence, but as the decades pass, only a small fraction ever reach the peak. The American economy functions like this massive mountain. At the bottom, at base camp, stands the ordinary worker, armed with specialized skills and the ambition to transform the daily exchange of time for wages into structural, generational wealth. This animated topographical map outlines the dimensions of that starting point. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the base camp of the American economic engine is crowded with 331.4 million individuals, where the median household income centers at $83,730. However, the ground at this elevation is uneven. As the map shifts to display demographic data, we see varying initial velocities for the ascent. Between 2023 and 2024, real income increased by 5.1% for Asian households and 5.5% for Hispanic households, while declining by 3.3% for Black households. A common error at this stage is equating a high gross income with actual net worth. Earning a six-figure salary merely affords a larger, more comfortable tent at base camp. It does not automatically propel a worker upward. The conversion of labor wages into actual wealth requires overcoming the environment itself. The physical limitations of the human body dictate a hard ceiling on wage earning. Exchanging hours for dollars is a linear equation. There is a finite limit to how many hours a person can work. But an even deeper problem exists. Any surplus cash generated by that labor actively degrades in value if it sits uninvested. The ascent is opposed by an invisible, highly pervasive antagonist known as financial gravity. This is the combined downward pressure of macroeconomic forces that strip away uninvested capital. Financial gravity does not rest and does not negotiate. For an ordinary worker attempting to save their way to wealth by simply hoarding cash in a checking account, forward progress becomes mathematically grueling. Escaping base camp requires a shift in how a worker manages their surplus. To move upward, they must move beyond working harder and instead change their strategy to outpace the gravitational pull of the economy. The primary component of financial gravity is inflation. Looking at this historical photograph of gas station prices illustrates how inflation acts as an unlegislated tax. By consistently raising the cost of basic necessities, it reduces the capacity to generate surplus capital. This vintage currency emphasizes the reality of the U.S. dollar over time. The Bureau of Labor Statistics Purchasing Power Index dropped to 30.40 as of May 2026. A dollar earned today buys nearly 70% less than it could command in the early 1980s. Consequently, relying purely on cash savings results in a mathematical loss over a working lifetime. The ground beneath the cash hoarder is continuously dissolving. When wage growth fails to meet these rising living costs, many workers turn to the second component of financial gravity, high-interest consumer credit. Debt is used as a temporary bridge across the gap. The aggregate numbers reveal acute distress. Nominal household debt reached $18.8 trillion in late 2025. Stripping away housing debt, the burden is heavily concentrated in unsecured liabilities, with student loans at $1.66 trillion and auto loans swelling to $1.69 trillion. This tiered diagram mapping credit scores to annual percentage rates reveals the mathematical trap of the credit card industry. In early 2026, the average credit card interest rate hit 21.52%, with deep subprime borrowers charged up to 26%. Carrying a balance at 21.52% triggers negative compound interest. This effectively transfers a significant portion of the worker's future labor directly to financial institutions. The combination of inflation and debt servicing creates a state of economic quicksand. Recent data from Lending Club indicates that between 60 and 62% of American consumers are trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, consuming their entire income just to survive the current month. The data rejects the assumption that this cycle is strictly a low-income problem. Financial gravity ensnares 45% of consumers earning over $100,000 annually who fail to control their lifestyle consumption. This contrasting pie chart visualizes the trap defined by the Bank of America Institute. When expenses like housing, groceries, and transportation consume more than 95% of an income, necessity spending dominates. This strips the household of the liquidity needed to purchase assets. Operating with zero surplus capital means climbing without a safety rope. These households are completely exposed to exogenous financial shocks, the sudden avalanches that occur over the course of a lifetime. This view of the Eccles Federal Reserve Building grounds the data from the annual survey of household economics and decision-making. This text reveals a specific vulnerability metric. 37% of the American population possesses insufficient cash or savings to cover a relatively minor $400 emergency bill. When an unexpected transmission failure occurs or a medical bill arrives, these households are often forced to finance the crisis via credit cards. This instantly triggers the 21% negative compounding cycle. A well-funded liquid emergency reserve acts as the anchor securing a climber during a storm. Without it, upward progress is an illusion, easily erased by a single financial setback. Stopping the downward pull of debt is only the baseline. To generate positive upward velocity and outpace inflation, the worker must employ the mathematics of compound interest, guided by the rule of 72. This split-screen graphic breaks down the velocity of wealth accumulation. Dividing the integer 72 by your expected annual return estimates the years required for your capital to double. In a high-yield savings account at 3.5%, it takes 20.6 years. In the S&P 500, yielding a historical average of 10%, wealth doubles every 7.2 years. As the graphic morphs into an exponential curve over a 20-year horizon, the opportunity cost of low yields becomes glaring. A 5% return grows a baseline portfolio to $2.6 million. A 7% return drives that exact same principal to $3.8 million. Because human labor has physical limits, relying entirely on wages ensures net worth stagnation. The ordinary worker must transition into an owner of appreciating assets. These two bar charts expose the starkest wealth divide in the United States. According to the Federal Reserve, the median net worth of a renter is $10,400. The median net worth of a homeowner is $396,200. The typical American homeowner is 38 times wealthier than the typical renter. Looking at this suburban home, we understand the mechanics of this asset class. Real estate fixes a household's largest single expense, shelter, against inflation, while providing an automated savings mechanism through monthly principal paydown. Transitioning from renting to owning establishes a structural tailwind. It separates the wealth builder from the highly exposed paycheck-to-paycheck underclass. While real estate anchors the climber, corporate equities provide the vertical lift. By consistently purchasing broad market index funds, the worker drafts off the collective productivity of the American economy. This dynamic line chart tracks average household net worth across the human lifespan. Wealth correlates heavily with age, as decades of mortgage paydowns and compound market growth reach their mathematical zeniths. By traditional retirement age, the average net worth peaks at $1.79 million. A persistent cultural narrative claims that reaching this elevation requires inherited wealth or dynastic privilege. The empirical data proves otherwise. Extensive surveys confirm that between 80 and 89% of millionaires in America are entirely self-made. They represent the first generation in their family's history to achieve financial independence. Escaping financial fragility depends on 3 specific actions. First, establish a liquidity moat. Build a 3 to 6 month cash reserve to neutralize financial avalanches and permanently sever reliance on high-interest credit cards. Second, acquire the anchor of real estate. Buying property fixes housing costs and initiates automated equity accumulation, ensuring your baseline net worth consistently expands. Third, harness the velocity of compounding. Direct all remaining surplus capital into broad market corporate equities, utilizing the historical yields of the S&P 500 to transform linear savings into exponential growth. Ultimately, the journey to the summit reveals that wealth is a mathematical outcome of discipline, patience, and the strategic acquisition of ownership. If you like such content, then like, share, and subscribe to the MoneyWise Dollar channel. What's your experience with this? Do you agree with these findings? Let us know in the comments below.